Emma Johnson stood on the bustling streets of New York City, her eyes scanning the familiar skyline that seemed to change with every passing day. The city was alive with energy, a constant hum of people and places that never seemed to rest. For Emma, a 28-year-old investigative journalist for the New York Times, this city was both her playground and her battleground. Her small apartment in Brooklyn was cluttered with stacks of newspapers, post-it notes scribbled with ideas, and a laptop that had become an extension of her. Today, like many others, she was lost in thought as she sipped her morning coffee from the corner Starbucks. The aroma was comforting, a reminder of the routine she had come to cherish amidst the chaos of her job. Emma had always been curious, a trait that had driven her to journalism. But lately, that curiosity had led her down a path she hadn't quite expected. She had stumbled upon a story that was bigger than anything she had tackled before. It started with a tip-off, a whisper about missing children from the 1990s, and a connection to a powerful organization with shadowy ties to the government. It was the kind of story that could change everything, if only she could piece it together. As she sat in the subway, heading towards the office, Emma reviewed her notes. Names and dates blurred together, but one thing was clear. She was onto something significant. Her editor, James Williams, had been skeptical at first, warning her to tread carefully. "You know, Emma, some stones are better left unturned," he had said, concern etched on his face. But Emma was not one to back down easily. Her day at the office began like any other, with the usual clatter of keyboards and the hum of printers. But beneath the surface, Emma could feel the tension building. She had spent weeks digging into archives, making calls, and meeting sources in dimly lit cafes. Each lead brought her closer to the truth, yet also deeper into danger. Her phone buzzed with a message from Olivia Brown, a fellow journalist and one of Emma's closest friends. "Lunch?" it read. Emma shot back a quick reply. "Sure, need to talk." They met at a nearby deli, the kind of place that served greasy burgers and fries that were just what one needed on a day like this. As they settled into their booth, Emma couldn't help but notice the concern in Olivia's eyes. "What's going on, Emma? You've been on edge lately." Emma hesitated, the weight of her discovery pressing down on her. "I think I'm onto something big, Liv. It's about these missing kids and, well, there might be some government ties." Olivia raised an eyebrow, her journalistic instincts kicking in. "Sounds serious. Are you sure you're not getting in over your head?" Emma sighed, taking a bite of her burger. "I don't know, maybe. But I can't shake the feeling that this is important. These kids, they deserve justice." The conversation lingered in Emma's mind as she made her way back to the office. The day dragged on with the usual chaos of breaking news and deadlines, but Emma's thoughts kept drifting back to the files she had uncovered. The names of the children, the whispers of a cover-up, and the shadowy figures that seemed to lurk at the edges of her investigation. As evening approached, Emma found herself alone in the office, the others having left for the day. She sat at her desk, the city's lights twinkling through the window, and began sifting through the documents once more. Her heart raced as she pieced together the connections, a web of deceit and power that seemed to stretch far beyond what she had imagined. It was then that she noticed a name she hadn't seen before, a name that sent a chill down her spine. William Johnson, her father's name. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of it. Could it be a coincidence? Or was her family somehow involved in this tangled mess? The thought was too overwhelming, and Emma pushed it aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it gnawed at her as she packed up her things and headed home. The subway ride back to Brooklyn was a blur, the usual hustle and bustle of the city fading into the background as Emma's mind raced. She knew she had to keep digging, to find the truth no matter where it led her, but the stakes had just gotten a lot higher, and the danger felt all too real. Emma arrived home to the comforting sight of her tiny apartment, the clutter of familiar chaos that grounded her. As she settled into her routine, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. A sense of unease washed over her as she hesitated, then answered the call. "Emma Johnson?" The voice on the other end was smooth, almost too smooth. "I've heard you're looking into some sensitive matters. Be careful. Not everyone wants the truth to come out." The line went dead before Emma could respond, leaving her in stunned silence. The threat was real, and as much as it terrified her, it also fueled her determination. She had to see this through, for the children, for the truth, and now, for herself. As she sat in the dim light of her apartment, surrounded by the city that never slept, Emma knew one thing for certain. She was in deeper than she had ever been before, and there was no turning back now. Emma Johnson sat at her cluttered desk in the dimly lit office of the New York Times, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she typed up her latest article on local politics. The hum of the newsroom buzzed around her, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that something big was just around the corner, waiting to be discovered. Her instincts, honed over years of chasing stories, told her that a breakthrough was near. The phone on her desk rang, jolting her back to reality. It was her editor, Linda Brown, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp eye for news. "Emma, I've got something for you," Linda said, her voice crackling through the receiver. "A source dropped off a package this morning. It's addressed to you." Intrigued, Emma made her way to Linda's office, weaving through the maze of desks and bustling reporters. Linda handed her a small, nondescript envelope. "No return address," Linda noted, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Be careful with this one." Back at her desk, Emma carefully opened the envelope. Inside, she found a stack of documents, their edges yellowed with age. As she skimmed through the pages, her heart began to race. The documents detailed the disappearance of several children from New York City in the early 1990s. Each case was eerily similar, with the children vanishing without a trace, leaving their families in despair. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard whispers of these cases before, stories passed down like urban legends, but these documents were real, and they pointed to something much larger than she had imagined. The papers hinted at a shadowy organization with ties to powerful figures in both the government and the corporate world. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma decided to dig deeper. She spent the next few days poring over archives and databases, piecing together a puzzle that seemed to grow more complex with each new discovery. Her investigation led her to an obscure reference to a charity event held in the early 90s, attended by several prominent businessmen and politicians. It was a lead, albeit a tenuous one, but it was enough to keep her going. Emma's mind raced as she considered the implications. If the documents were authentic, they could expose a conspiracy that had been buried for decades. But the deeper she delved, the more dangerous her quest became. She began to notice subtle signs that she was being watched: an unfamiliar face lurking near her apartment, a car that seemed to appear wherever she went. One evening, as she sat in a quiet corner of a Brooklyn cafe, a man approached her table. He was tall and well-dressed, with an air of authority that made Emma instantly wary. "Emma Johnson?" he asked, his voice smooth yet demanding. "Who's asking?" Emma replied, her guard up. The man slid into the seat across from her, ignoring her question. "You're digging into things that are best left alone," he warned, his eyes locking onto hers. "For your own sake, I'd advise you to stop." Emma's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to be intimidated. "What are you afraid of me finding?" she challenged, her voice steady despite the fear creeping in. The man leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're playing a dangerous game, Emma. Some secrets are meant to stay buried." With that, he stood and walked away, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts and a growing sense of unease. She knew she couldn't ignore the warning, but her journalistic instincts pushed her forward. The truth was out there, and she was determined to find it, no matter the cost. As she left the cafe, Emma's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She was stepping into a world of shadows, where each discovery brought new risks. But she was not alone. Her colleagues at the New York Times were her allies, and she knew she could count on them for support. Back in her apartment, Emma spread the documents across her dining table, determined to unravel the mystery. She had entered a dangerous game, but she was ready to play. The stakes were high, and every move counted. But Emma was resolved to see it through, no matter where the path might lead. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Olivia Williams, who had always been her sounding board. "You okay? Heard something's up at work," the message read. Emma typed a quick response, her fingers flying over the screen. "I'm onto something big, Liv, but it's getting risky." Seconds later, Olivia replied, "Just be careful, okay? We need you around for our pizza nights." Emma smiled, a small comfort in the storm brewing around her. She knew she had people who cared, who would stand by her no matter what. As she turned her attention back to the documents, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was on the brink of uncovering a truth that could shake the foundations of power in New York City, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Emma Johnson's fingers danced over her laptop keyboard, the clattering keys resonating in her small Brooklyn apartment. The walls around her were a collage of newspaper clippings and photographs, a testament to her relentless pursuit of the truth. The latest discovery had left her reeling, a series of classified documents detailing the mysterious disappearances of children in the 1990s, right here in New York City. The revelation that these children might have been taken by a shadowy organization with governmental ties was a Pandora's box, and Emma was compelled to open it further. She sat back in her chair, staring at the screen, her mind racing with possibilities and dangers. Her instincts told her she was onto something big, something that could change everything. Her phone buzzed on the cluttered desk, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a text from James, her colleague at the New York Times, and a trusted friend. "Emma, got a lead for you. Call me when you can." Emma picked up the phone, dialing James's number, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. "Hey, James, what's the lead?" "Emma, you're not going to believe this." James's voice crackled through the line, an edge of urgency in his tone. "I found someone who claims to have been part of this organization. They're willing to talk, but only to you." "Are you serious?" Emma's voice was a mix of disbelief and determination. "Where can I meet them?" "There's a coffee shop in Greenwich Village, the Quiet Corner. Can you meet them there tomorrow at 3 p.m.? Emma noted the details, her mind already racing ahead. "I'll be there. Thanks, James." After hanging up, she leaned back, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities. The Quiet Corner was a familiar haunt, a place where she often retreated to write and think. It was comforting in its familiarity, yet the meeting promised anything but comfort. The next day, Emma arrived at the coffee shop a little before 3, her nerves buzzing like electricity. The Quiet Corner was a cozy space, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the murmur of subdued conversations. She ordered a cappuccino and settled into a corner booth, her eyes scanning the faces of the patrons. A few minutes later, a man in his mid-50s approached her table. He had a weathered look about him, as if time had etched its story on his face. "Emma Johnson?" he asked, his voice deep and cautious. "Yes, that's me," Emma replied, gesturing for him to sit. "And you are?" "Call me William," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "I worked for the organization you're looking into." Emma's heart raced. "Can you tell me more about what you did there?" William hesitated, glancing around the room as if fearing being overheard. "I was involved in logistics, making sure everything ran smoothly. But I started noticing things. Kids being taken, records being erased. I didn't know what to do." Emma leaned in closer, her voice gentle but insistent. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I can't live with the guilt anymore," William confessed, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of remorse and fear. "And because they're still out there, still taking kids." The weight of his words settled heavily between them, the enormity of the situation pressing down on Emma. "Do you have any evidence? Something I can use to expose them?" "I have some documents," William admitted. But they're hidden. I can't risk being caught with them. Emma nodded, understanding the danger they both faced. Can you get them to me? I'll do everything I can to protect you. William sighed, his expression one of resignation and determination. I'll try. But be careful, Emma. They're powerful and they won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to keep this quiet. As they parted ways, Emma felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. This was bigger than anything she had ever tackled before, and the stakes were higher than she could have imagined. But the truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and she was determined to bring it to light. Back at her apartment, Emma began piecing together everything she had learned. The documents, the organization, William's testimony, it was all a tangled web of secrets and lies. She knew she needed to tread carefully, to gather as much evidence as possible before making her move. As night fell over the city, Emma sat by her window, the distant lights of Manhattan twinkling like stars. The enormity of what she was uncovering weighed heavily on her, but she felt a sense of purpose that drove her forward. She was on the cusp of something monumental, a story that could expose corruption at the highest levels and possibly even change the course of history. But with that realization came the chilling understanding that she was not alone in this fight. There were others who would stop at nothing to keep the truth buried, and as she delved deeper into the conspiracy, she knew she had to be prepared for anything. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but Emma Johnson was not one to back down. She was ready to confront whatever lay ahead, for the sake of the truth and the children who had been lost to the shadows. Emma Johnson leaned back in her chair, her eyes scanning the dimly lit office of the New York Times. The clock ticked quietly, but her mind was racing as she pieced together the fragments of her latest investigation. The documents she had uncovered hinted at something much larger than she had anticipated, something that involved missing children from the 90s and a conspiracy that reached into the upper echelons of power. The phone call she had received earlier from her source, an anonymous tipster who insisted on remaining nameless, had left her with a sense of dread mixed with determination. "They won't stop until they silence everyone," the voice had whispered over the line. Emma knew she was in deep, but she couldn't back away now. She had to see this through. As she sifted through the papers scattered across her desk, her eyes landed on a name that sent a chill down her spine. William Brown, a prominent businessman known for his philanthropic work and his close ties to several high-ranking politicians. The idea that he could be involved in something so sinister was hard to digest, but every lead seemed to point in his direction. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. It was James, her colleague and closest confidant at the paper. He had been following the story with her, offering insights and moral support when she needed it most. "Emma, you look like you've seen a ghost," James said, concern etched on his face. "What's going on?" "I'm onto something big, James, but it feels like a tangled web. Every time I think I'm getting closer, another complication pops up." She gestured to the documents on her desk. "Look at this. William Brown's name keeps coming up." James raised an eyebrow. "Brown? The same William Brown who donates to all those children's charities?" "The very same," Emma confirmed, her voice tinged with disbelief. "I can't shake the feeling that he's connected to these missing children, but I need more proof, something concrete." James nodded thoughtfully. "Have you thought about reaching out to someone who might know more about his operations? Maybe someone on the inside?" Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I've been trying, but it's like hitting a brick wall. Everyone's too scared to talk." They were interrupted by the familiar chime of an email notification on Emma's computer. She opened it, and her eyes widened as she read the message. It was from an anonymous email address, but the contents were clear. A location and a time, with a cryptic note, "Answers lie within." "This could be our break," Emma said, turning the screen towards James. "But it's risky. What if it's a trap?" James leaned in, studying the email. "It could be, but it might also be the chance we've been waiting for. We can't ignore it." Emma nodded, determination hardening her resolve. "All right, let's go." But we need to be careful. I have a feeling we're stepping into dangerous territory." The two of them gathered their belongings and left the office, stepping out into the bustling streets of New York. The city lights flickered as they made their way to the subway, the rumble of the train echoing their heartbeat as they traveled across town. As they approached the address from the email, a rundown warehouse on the edge of the city, a sense of foreboding settled over them. The air was thick with tension, and Emma's instincts screamed at her to turn back, but she pushed forward, driven by the need for answers. The warehouse was silent, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. They entered cautiously, the dim light casting eerie shadows on the walls. In the center of the room stood a lone figure, cloaked in darkness. "Emma Johnson," the figure called out, their voice echoing off the walls. "I've been expecting you." Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" The figure stepped into the light, revealing a middle-aged woman with weary eyes. "My name is Sophia Brown," she said, her voice steady. "William Brown is my brother, and I have information that can help you." Emma exchanged a glance with James, her mind racing. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? Sophia continued, "I can't stand by and watch him destroy more lives. He may have everyone else fooled, but I know the truth. Those children, they were taken for a reason, and it all leads back to him." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone needs to stop him, and I believe you're the one who can do it," Sophia replied, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. Emma nodded slowly, the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. "All right, tell me everything you know." As Sophia began to unravel the dark secrets of her brother's dealings, Emma realized just how deep the conspiracy ran. Each revelation was a piece of the puzzle, fitting together to form a picture more horrifying than she had imagined. But with every answer came more questions, and the realization that their journey was far from over. The truth was within reach, but so was the danger that threatened to engulf them all. Emma knew they had to tread carefully, but she was more determined than ever to see this through to the end, no matter the cost. Emma Johnson sat at her kitchen table, the dim light of a single lamp illuminating the scattered papers and photographs that surrounded her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the document she had just unearthed. It was a government report, stamped with the word "classified" in bold red letters. The report detailed a series of disappearances of children in the 1990s. These weren't just isolated cases. They were part of a larger, more sinister pattern. She leaned back in her chair, running her hands through her hair, trying to make sense of it all. The information she had found pointed to a powerful organization, one that seemed to have its tendrils wrapped around influential figures in politics and business. Emma had heard whispers of such organizations before, but she never imagined she would stumble upon evidence of their existence. The sound of her phone buzzing on the table snapped her back to reality. It was a message from her friend and fellow journalist, James Williams. "Emma, we need to talk. I found something you need to see. Call me ASAP." Without hesitation, Emma picked up her phone and dialed James's number. He answered on the first ring. "Emma, you're not going to believe this," James said, his voice filled with urgency. "I was digging through some old archives and found a connection between the missing children and a company called Global Innovations. They're a major player in the tech world, but there's something off about them." Emma's mind raced. "Global Innovations? I've heard of them. They're huge. What did you find?" "I found financial records that show large sums of money being funneled into shell companies. These companies have ties to politicians and business leaders all over the country. It's like they're funding some kind of secret operation." Emma's pulse quickened. "Do you think they're involved in the disappearances?" "It looks that way," James replied. "But we need more proof. We have to be careful. If this gets out, it could put us both in danger." Emma nodded, even though James couldn't see her. She knew he was right. This was bigger than anything she had ever uncovered. "I'll keep digging on my end. We need to meet up and compare notes." "Agreed," James said. "But let's be discreet. We don't know who might be watching." After hanging up, Emma sat in silence, her mind reeling from the revelation. She felt a mix of fear and determination. Fear for her safety and the safety of those she loved, but determination to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The next day, Emma met James at a small, inconspicuous cafe in Brooklyn. They sat in a corner booth, their voices low as they exchanged information. James spread out the documents he had brought with him, and Emma did the same. Together, they pieced together a timeline of events, connecting the dots between the disappearances, global innovations, and the shadowy figures they suspected were involved. "This is insane," James muttered, shaking his head as he looked over the evidence. "It's like something out of a conspiracy thriller." "I know," Emma replied, her eyes scanning the documents. "But we can't back down now. We have to see this through." Just then, Emma's phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number. She opened it cautiously, her eyes widening as she read the text. "Stop digging if you value your life." Her heart skipped a beat, and she showed the message to James. "We're being watched," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the cafe. James's expression hardened. "We need to be more careful, but we can't let them scare us into silence." Emma nodded, her resolve strengthening. "You're right. We've come too far to turn back now." As they left the cafe, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone following them. But the street was busy, filled with people going about their day, oblivious to the danger that lurked beneath the surface. Over the next few days, Emma and James worked tirelessly, gathering more evidence, reaching out to contacts, and trying to stay one step ahead of whoever was trying to silence them. Each new piece of information they uncovered only deepened the mystery and heightened the stakes. One evening, as Emma sat at her desk, poring over yet another stack of documents, she received a call from an unknown number. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the answer button, before finally pressing it. "Emma Johnson?" a deep voice on the other end of the line asked. "Who is this?" Emma replied, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her chest. "That's not important," the voice said. "What is important is that you stop what you're doing. You're in way over your head." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. "I don't know who you are, but I'm not going to be intimidated." There was a pause on the other end, as if the caller was considering their next words carefully. "This isn't a game, Emma. People who dig too deep into these matters tend to disappear." The line went dead, leaving Emma staring at her phone, a chill running down her spine. She knew she was in danger, but the threat only fueled her determination. She couldn't let fear stop her. She owed it to the children who had disappeared, to their families, and to herself to uncover the truth. With renewed resolve, Emma returned to her work, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she typed up her notes, determined to see this investigation through to the end, no matter the cost. Emma Johnson sat at her desk in her small apartment in Brooklyn, the glow from her laptop illuminating her face as she stared at the screen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating for a moment before she began typing furiously. The documents she had found were sprawled across her desk, a chaotic mix of newspaper clippings, photographs, and handwritten notes. Each piece was like a puzzle, slowly coming together to reveal a picture that terrified her. She paused, taking a deep breath as she glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight, but sleep was the farthest thing from her mind. Her thoughts were consumed with the missing children from the 90s and the shadowy organization that seemed to be at the heart of it all. The deeper she delved, the more she realized how far-reaching the conspiracy went. It wasn't just about the children. It was about power, influence, and a web of secrets that threatened to unravel everything. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a text from Olivia Brown, her closest friend and fellow journalist. "Are you okay? Haven't heard from you in days." Emma replied quickly. "I'm fine, just deep in this investigation. It's bigger than I thought." The response was almost immediate. "Be careful. You know how dangerous this could be." Emma knew all too well. She could feel the danger lurking at the edges of her consciousness, a constant reminder that she was treading on dangerous ground. But she couldn't stop now. She was in too deep, and the truth was too important to ignore. She picked up one of the photographs on her desk. It was a faded picture of a group of children, their faces smiling and innocent. She flipped it over, reading the names scrawled on the back. Names that matched the missing persons reports she had uncovered. Her heart ached for them, for their families, for the lives that had been torn apart. Her mind drifted back to the phone call she had received from her anonymous source. The voice had been distorted, but the urgency was clear. "They took them," the voice had said. "They took them, and they're still out there." Emma had tried to trace the call, but it had been routed through so many channels that it was impossible to pinpoint its origin. Whoever her source was, they were well protected and clearly knew what they were doing. But their warning had been clear. She was digging into something dangerous. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp knock on her door. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. It was late, too late for visitors. She approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. To her relief, it was William, her editor. She quickly unlocked the door and let him in. "Emma, what's going on?" William asked, concern etched on his face. "You've been off the grid for days." Emma gestured for him to sit, showing him the mess of documents on her desk. "It's this story, William. It's huge. These children, they were taken by an organization that's tied to the government. It's all connected. Politicians, business leaders, even some of our own." William frowned, leaning over to examine the photos and notes. "This is heavy stuff, Emma. You need to be careful. If what you're saying is true, these people won't hesitate to protect their secrets." "I know," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "But I can't just walk away. These kids, their families, they deserve the truth. We have to expose this." William sighed, rubbing the back of his neck in frustration. "All right, but promise me you'll keep me in the loop. No more going dark. We need to be smart about this." Emma nodded, grateful for his support. "I promise. I'll keep you updated." As William left, Emma sat back down, determination burning in her eyes. She had a lead, a name that kept cropping up in her research. Jonathan Carter, a prominent businessman with ties to various government contracts. She was sure he held the key to unraveling this conspiracy. She opened her laptop and began drafting an email to a contact she had in Washington, someone who might be able to dig into Carter's dealings. She needed more information, more evidence to back up her claims. As she hit send, a chill ran down her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that every move she made was being scrutinized by unseen eyes. But she pushed the fear aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The truth was out there, and she was determined to find it, no matter the cost. The night stretched on, the city outside her window quiet and still. But inside her apartment, Emma's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and possibilities. She knew she was on the brink of something big, something that could change everything. And despite the danger, she felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect of uncovering the truth. Emma Johnson's hands trembled as she picked up another photograph from the chaotic pile on the table. The realization of the enormity of what she had uncovered was beginning to weigh on her more heavily than she had anticipated. The faces of the missing children stared back at her, their innocence captured in time, oblivious to the sinister fate that had befallen them. It was a puzzle with too many missing pieces, and each piece she found only deepened the growing chasm of fear within her. Her phone buzzed, breaking the oppressive silence of the room. It was William Brown, her closest confidant and fellow journalist, who had been helping her piece together the leads. "Emma, are you there?" His voice crackled through the speaker, brimming with urgency. "Yeah, I'm here, Will," Emma replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found something. Something big." "What did you find?" Will asked, his tone shifting to one of cautious optimism. Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. It's a list of names, Will. The children weren't just disappearing, they were being taken, and it looks like it was orchestrated by some government entity, maybe even higher. There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if Will was processing the weight of her words. Emma, you need to be careful. If what you're saying is true, then you're in serious danger. They won't want this to get out. I know, Emma said, glancing nervously at the window, half expecting to see someone watching her from the shadows. But I can't stop now. There are lives at stake. These families deserve to know what happened to their children. Will sighed deeply. All right, just promise me you'll keep your head down. We'll figure this out together. I'll do some digging on my end, see if I can find any connections. Thanks, Will. I'll keep you posted. Emma hung up, feeling slightly reassured by Will's support. Yet the feeling was fleeting as the gravity of her situation settled back in. Later that night, as Emma tried to get some rest, her mind wouldn't let her escape from the haunting images and troubling revelations. Sleep eluded her, and every creak in the house set her heart racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, her every move monitored by unseen eyes. The next morning, Emma decided to visit St. Mary's Hospital, where one of the children had been reported missing years ago. Perhaps there was someone there who remembered something, anything that could help her unravel this twisted conspiracy. She took a deep breath, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and stepped out into the brisk New York morning. The hospital was bustling with activity, the usual chaos of people rushing about, doctors consulting with nurses, and patients waiting anxiously for their appointments. Emma approached the reception desk, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. Hi, I'm looking for someone who might remember a case from the 90s, Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. A child who disappeared. The receptionist, an older woman with kind eyes, glanced up, momentarily taken aback by the request. That's quite a while back. Do you have any more details? Emma nodded, pulling out a photograph of a young boy, his innocent smile a stark contrast to the grim reality. His name was Michael Jones. He went missing from here in 1995. The receptionist's eyes softened as she looked at the photo. I remember Michael. Such a tragedy. Let me see if there's someone here who might remember more. Emma waited, her nerves on edge, as the receptionist made a few phone calls. After what felt like an eternity, she was directed to an elderly nurse who had worked at the hospital for decades. I remember Michael, the nurse said, her voice tinged with sadness. He was a sweet boy. His disappearance shook all of us, but there was something strange about it. Emma leaned in, her curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Well, after he went missing, there were whispers. Some of the staff mentioned seeing men in suits around the hospital around that time. They weren't doctors, and they didn't seem to belong. Emma's heart skipped a beat. This was the kind of lead she had been hoping for. Do you think they had something to do with his disappearance? The nurse hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. I can't say for sure, but it's possible. Be careful, young lady. Asking questions about these things, it can lead to trouble. Emma thanked the nurse, her mind racing with new possibilities. As she left the hospital, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but she forced herself to walk calmly to the nearest subway station, blending into the crowd. Once on the train, she found a corner seat and pulled out her phone to text Will. Found a lead. Men in suits at the hospital. Possible connection. She hit send, hoping he would respond quickly. As the train rocked gently back and forth, Emma's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She was getting closer to the truth, but with each step, the danger loomed larger. She had to find out who was behind the disappearances, but at what cost? The stakes were higher than ever, and she couldn't afford to make a wrong move. But as the train sped through the dark tunnels, she knew there was no turning back now. Emma Johnson sat in a dimly lit coffee shop in Midtown Manhattan, her eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window. She watched as people hurried past, umbrellas clashing like swords in a silent battle against the storm. Her mind, however, was miles away, tangled in the web of conspiracy she had stumbled upon. The weight of the truth she carried felt heavier with each passing hour, and the fear of what was to come gnawed at her resolve. She clutched her cup of coffee, seeking warmth and clarity in its bitter depths. Across the table, her best friend, Olivia Brown, studied her with concern. Olivia had been her confidant since college, and now she was the only person Emma trusted with this dangerous secret. "Emma, you look like you haven't slept in days," Olivia said, her voice gentle but firm. "You need to take care of yourself. This investigation is consuming you." Emma gave a weary smile, her eyes reflecting the turmoil within. "I know, Olivia, but I can't just walk away. These documents, they reveal something horrific, something that's been hidden for too long." Olivia leaned in, lowering her voice. "What exactly did you find? You keep mentioning these missing children, but how does it all connect?" Emma hesitated, glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "It started with those newspaper clippings from the 90s about missing kids. I cross-referenced them with some government archives and found connections to several influential figures, politicians, business moguls. It seems they were all part of an organization that took these children." Olivia's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you saying the government was involved in kidnapping?" "Not officially, but some powerful people within it, yes," Emma replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And there's more. I think my family might be involved too. My father, he had connections I never knew about." The revelation hung between them like a dark cloud, the implications too vast to comprehend. Olivia reached across the table, squeezing Emma's hand reassuringly. "Emma, you need to be careful. If these people are as powerful as you say, they won't hesitate to silence you." Emma nodded, the gravity of her situation sinking in. "That's why I need your help, Olivia. I can't do this alone. We need to gather more evidence, something concrete that will make people listen." Olivia paused, her loyalty battling with her fear. Finally, she nodded. "All right, what do we do next?" Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities. "I need to access some secure databases. There's a chance we can find more information on the children and where they might have been taken. I have a contact at a tech firm who might help us get in." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "You're going to hack into a government database?" "Not exactly," Emma said quickly, shaking her head. "Just get access to some restricted files. We need proof, and this might be our only chance." The rain continued to pour outside, a relentless backdrop to their conversation. Emma's determination was palpable, her fear of the unknown overshadowed by the urgency of her mission. As they left the cafe, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, the weight of her discovery driving her forward. Later that evening, Emma found herself in a cramped office space, the walls lined with computer monitors and tangled cables. Her contact, a tech-savvy programmer named James Williams, was already at work, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with practiced ease. "Thanks for meeting me, James," Emma said, her voice steady despite the nerves coiling in her stomach. James gave her a reassuring smile, his eyes never leaving the screen. "No problem. Olivia filled me in on the basics. I've set up a secure connection, so we shouldn't be traced." Emma watched as lines of code scrolled across the monitor, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Do you think you can find anything?" James nodded, his expression focused. "I'm in. Give me a few minutes to navigate through the layers. If there's anything there, I'll find it." The room was silent, save for the hum of the computers and the occasional tapping of keys. Emma's mind raced with possibilities, each new lead bringing her closer to uncovering the truth. She glanced at Olivia, who stood by her side, offering silent support. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, James leaned back in his chair, a triumphant smile on his face. "Got it. There's a list of names, dates, and locations. It's all there, Emma, everything you need." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she leaned over to study the screen. The names blurred together, each one a testament to the lives disrupted by the conspiracy. She felt a surge of anger and determination, a fierce resolve to bring justice to those who had been wronged. "This is it," she murmured, her voice a mixture of awe and determination. "This is what we've been looking for." Olivia placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice filled with admiration. "You've done it, Emma. You've found the truth. But now we need to figure out how to use it." Emma nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. "We need to go public, get the media involved. People need to know what's been happening, and we need to do it before they find out we're onto them." James interjected, his tone cautious. "You need to be careful. Once this goes public, there's no turning back. They'll come after you with everything they've got." Emma met his gaze, her eyes filled with a steely determination. "I know the risks, James, but this is bigger than me, bigger than any of us. These children deserve justice, and I'm not backing down." The room fell silent, the gravity of their task settling over them like a heavy cloak. Emma knew the path ahead was fraught with danger, but she also knew she wasn't alone. Together, they would face whatever came next, armed with the truth and a fierce determination to see justice served. Emma Johnson stood at the edge of the dimly lit parking garage, her heart pounding in her chest like a relentless drum. She clutched her phone tightly, the screen displaying the last message she received from an anonymous number. "Meet me at the old warehouse, midnight, come alone." She knew she was walking into a potential trap, but there was no turning back now. Too much was at stake, and the truth was within her grasp. As she approached the warehouse, the moonlight cast eerie shadows across the decrepit building. Her footsteps echoed in the silence, each step amplifying her anxiety. She hesitated at the door, taking a deep breath before pushing it open. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and neglect. The once bustling space, now a tomb of forgotten secrets. "Emma!" a voice called out from the darkness, startling her. She spun around to face the direction of the voice, her eyes straining to see who it was. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the pale light filtering through the cracked windows. It was William Brown, a man she had encountered during her investigation, someone she had not entirely trusted. "William," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "Why did you bring me here?" "I needed to show you something," William said, holding up a folder. "This contains the final piece of the puzzle, the evidence that will expose the entire operation." Emma's eyes widened, her fingers itching to grab the folder. "What do you mean? What have you found?" William stepped closer, his expression grave. "The organization responsible for the disappearances, it's more powerful than we imagined. It reaches into the highest levels of government, the very people meant to protect us." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were staggering, and she understood now why so many had tried to silence her. "We have to go public with this," she insisted, her determination renewed. "People need to know the truth." William nodded, handing her the folder. "I agree, but you have to be careful. They won't hesitate to stop you." Just then, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse, and both Emma and William instinctively ducked. The door slammed open, and several men in dark suits stormed in, their intentions clear. "Run, Emma!" William shouted, pushing her towards a side exit. "I'll hold them off!" Emma hesitated for a split second, her heart torn, but there was no time to argue. Clutching the folder to her chest, she sprinted towards the exit, her mind racing with thoughts of survival and justice. Behind her, the sounds of a struggle confirmed that William was doing his best to buy her time. Bursting into the cold night air, Emma kept running, her breath visible in the frigid air. She didn't stop until she reached a busy street, blending into the crowd and disappearing into the anonymity of the city. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and resolve, knowing that the confrontation was far from over. As Emma made her way to a safe location, she thought about the children whose lives had been stolen, the families left in despair. She couldn't let their stories end in silence. She found refuge in a small cafe, the warm lights and the murmur of conversations providing a temporary sanctuary. She needed to plan her next move carefully. Sipping a cup of coffee to warm her chilled bones, Emma reviewed the contents of the folder. Each page was a stark reminder of the horrors she was up against, but it also fueled her determination. She knew she had allies willing to help, but reaching out to them would be risky. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, hoping for good news. It was a message from Olivia Smith, a trusted colleague who had been her confidant throughout the investigation. "Got your back. Meeting at St. Mary's Hospital, 2 a.m. Be safe." Emma exhaled shakily, grateful for Olivia's support. She knew she wasn't alone in this fight, and she would need every ounce of strength and courage to see it through. As the clock ticked closer to the appointed time, Emma mentally prepared herself for the confrontation that awaited. Leaving the cafe, she hailed a taxi and instructed the driver to take her to St. Mary's Hospital. The city lights blurred past the window, and for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a world where the truth was known and justice was served. But reality snapped back into focus as the taxi pulled up to the hospital entrance. Olivia was waiting in the lobby, her expression a mix of anxiety and determination. "Emma," she called, relief evident in her voice as they embraced. "Did you get the evidence?" Emma nodded, holding up the folder. "It's all here. We need to find a way to get this to the right people." Olivia glanced around, ensuring they weren't being watched. "I have a few contacts who can help, but we need to act fast." As they made their way to a secluded area of the hospital, Emma felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it, the climax of their journey. The confrontation with the truth and those who sought to bury it was inevitable. But together, they were ready to face whatever came next, determined to shine a light on the darkness and ensure the secrets they had uncovered would never be hidden again. Emma Johnson stood at the edge of the East River, the cold wind biting at her cheeks as she looked out at the gray expanse of water. The city skyline loomed behind her, a testament to human achievement and, she thought bitterly, human deception. Her heart raced with the knowledge of what she was about to do. The documents she had uncovered painted a damning picture of corruption and betrayal, implicating figures she had once admired, even loved. She took a deep breath, recalling the countless nights spent piecing together the puzzle, her laptop glowing in the dim light of her small apartment. Each clue had led her deeper into a conspiracy that spanned decades, a tangled web that ensnared politicians, business magnates, and her own family. The truth was a dangerous beast, and she had chosen to confront it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder of the message she had sent to her editor at the Times. She had debated for hours whether to involve him, knowing the danger it might bring to his doorstep. But the truth had to be told, and she could not do it alone. She checked the time. In just a few minutes, she would meet with a contact who promised to help her go public with the information. As she waited, her mind drifted back to her parents. The revelation that they were part of the very conspiracy she sought to expose had shaken her to her core. Growing up, her father had been a pillar of strength, a respected figure in the community. Now she understood the lengths he had gone to protect the secrets that had haunted her family for years. "Emma," a voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see James, her contact, approaching with a cautious glance over his shoulder. "We don't have much time. Are you ready?" She nodded, her resolve hardening. "Let's do this." They walked briskly toward a nearby subway entrance, the rumble of the trains below echoing their urgent footsteps. As they descended the stairs, James laid out the plan. "We'll meet the others at the safe house. From there, we can start releasing the documents to the media. Once they're out, it'll be hard for them to silence us." Emma felt a surge of determination. "And what about my family? What if they come after them?" James paused, his expression softening. "We're taking precautions, but you need to be prepared for the fallout. This is going to change everything." She nodded, knowing the truth of his words. Her family would be exposed, their reputations ruined. But the thought of the missing children, their lives stolen away in the shadows, steeled her heart. They deserved justice, and she was their only hope. The subway car rattled around them, the noise a comforting cover for their conversation. As they approached their stop, Emma felt a pang of fear. She had no idea what awaited them at the safe house, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. The safe house was a modest apartment in Brooklyn, its nondescript exterior belying the importance of what was about to happen inside. As Emma and James entered, they were greeted by a small group of journalists and activists, each one committed to uncovering the truth. "We're ready when you are," a woman said, gesturing to a makeshift command center set up in the living room. Screens displayed news feeds and social media channels, ready to broadcast their findings to the world. Emma took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Let's get started." The hours that followed were a blur of activity. Emma worked tirelessly, uploading documents and coordinating the release of information. As the story broke, the response was immediate. News outlets picked up the revelations, and the public reacted with shock and outrage. As the first waves of the scandal hit, Emma felt a mix of emotions: relief that the truth was finally out, fear for what would come next, and a deep sadness for all that had been lost. She thought of her parents, wondering how they were coping with the fallout. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from her mother. Emma hesitated before opening it, bracing herself for the contents. The message was simple, yet it carried a weight of years of unspoken truths. "I'm sorry. I love you." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she read the words. She knew that their relationship could never be the same, but she hoped that one day they might find a way to heal. For now, she had to focus on the task at hand. The hours stretched into the early morning, the city outside beginning to stir as the sun crept over the horizon. Exhausted but resolute, Emma watched as the stories continued to unfold, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what she had set in motion. As the first light of dawn broke through the windows, she felt a sense of peace. The truth was out, and although the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, she knew she had done the right thing. She had given a voice to the voiceless, and for that, she would never regret her choice. James approached, a cup of coffee in hand. "You did it, Emma. The world knows now." She accepted the coffee, grateful for the warmth. "We did it," she corrected, offering a tired smile. "And now, we have to make sure they never forget." Together, they watched as the city came to life, a new day dawning full of possibilities and hope.